Hi students, I hope all of you are in good health. Today we will be learning about the different types of question answers from physical and chemical changes. That means we will be revising this chapter 2 physical and chemical changes once more. So let us begin. Let us define the term physical change, chemical change, periodic change, non-periodic change, desirable change, undesirable change, reversible and irreversible change. First of all, physical change. It is a temporary change in which no new substances are formed and the chemical composition of the original substance remains the same, even though some of its physical properties like color, state, size may change. For example, if you take a glass of water and start heating it, we will see at first the water starts evaporating, that is changes into vapor. That means the state of the substance water is changing. But after cooling, we can again convert this water vapor into water. Thus, we see that there is no change in chemical composition of the substance, and the original substance, that is water, can be regained back by reversing the conditions. Though we see that there is a change in physical property like state, but ultimately there is no chemical change so occurring, so it's a physical change. Next is, what is a chemical change? It is a permanent change in which new substances are formed. Here the original substance cannot be obtained by simple physical means. Suppose when sodium comes in contact with water, what happens? It starts catching fire and produces the compound sodium hydroxide and the gas hydrogen. Now, sodium and water is the reactant over here have a completely different chemical property which produces the product sodium hydroxide and water, which is having completely different chemical properties. That means the entire chemical composition of the substance is changed. And even if we try by simple physical means like change in temperature, change in pressure, if we try like this, we will not be getting back sodium and water again. And thus the change is permanent and it's known as chemical change. Now, what is periodic change? It is a change that is repeated at regular intervals of time. For example, the change in high tide and low tide, the occurrence of day and night, all this occur at regular intervals of time and thus is known as periodic changes. Next is non-periodic change. Changes that are not repeated at regular intervals and occur irregularly in nature is known as non-periodic change. Next, desirable change. Changes that are usually helpful to mankind are said to be desirable. For example, there are some vegetables which we cannot eat raw. We need to simply cook them. If we are cooking them, then it becomes soft and palatable, and as a result, we can consume those. And thus, the change which occurs here is desirable to us, so it is known as desirable change. Next, what is undesirable change? Change that brings about destruction and causes harm to mankind, like if there is a flood, if there is an earthquake. Now, this type of change is always accompanied by a massive rate of destruction to mankind, like buildings destroys, agricultural field destroys, there is lack of stored food everywhere, the food gets rotten, there is increase in price of each and every article in the market. All these are undesirable, which comes with this change, and therefore it's an undesirable change. Next, what is reversible change? When change in a substance can be reversed by reversing the condition, it is said to be reversible change. For example, when ice is brought out of refrigerator, slowly but steadily it changes to water. And when water is heated, it slowly but steadily changes to water vapor. On cooling, water vapor again changes to water, and on further cooling at a particular temperature, it again gets back to the form ice. As change in state or change in substance over here occurs by simply reversing the condition, that means it can form or change from one form to the other by simply reversing the condition. Therefore, it is known as reversible change. Then what is irreversible change? When change in a substance cannot be reversed by reversing or changing the condition, then it is said to be irreversible change. That means, like, if once hydrogen reacts with chlorine and forms hydrochloric acid, even if we try to reverse the condition, we will not get back hydrogen chlorine over here by simple physical means. Again, for example, if you simply take a piece of paper and burn it, we will get what? We will simply get ashes. Now, when we try to get back the paper again, we will not get back it. Why? Because it's an irreversible change. Next. So if we sum up all the phenomena, what do we get? We are getting the difference between physical and chemical change. Now, physical change is what? It's a temporary change, whereas chemical change, it's a permanent change. Why? Because once the substance is formed, it will no more regain back to the same form again. Next, in case of physical change, no new substance is formed. Substance like in physical change, though it appears that water is formed when ice melts. It seems as if water is a new compound and ice is something else. But on careful observation, we will see that we will simply see that no new substance is formed. Ice and water both has the same chemical composition. Next is chemical change. Now, in case of chemical change, new substances are formed. Like whenever a paper is burnt, it gives rise to ashes. That means ashes and the paper is having chemical composition which is simply different from each other. Therefore, new substances are formed over here. Physical change. The original form of the substance can be obtained easily by physical method. Like whenever ice melts on increasing the temperature into water. If we simply lower the temperature by putting again the water back in the refrigerator, we will get back ice again. Therefore, here the original form of the substance can be obtained. But in case of chemical change, the original substance cannot be obtained by simple physical means. That means once the paper is burnt into ashes, it will not again come back to the form paper again. Next, physical change can be reversed by simply reversing the physical means. That means on increasing, decreasing the temperature, pressure and all this, we can simply get back the reactants again from the product. Whereas in case of chemical change, we cannot get back the reactants. For example, when the paper is burned, it gives ashes. But if we try to get back the paper again, we will not get it back because the change cannot be done by the help of simple physical means, like simply by changing the pressure or simply by changing the temperature. Next, let us define the following term: freezing, freezing point, melting, boiling, boiling point, evaporation, and condensation. Let us have a recapitulation. What is freezing? Freezing is a process by which a substance in the liquid state changes into a solid state on cooling at a particular temperature. Like when we put a glass filled water inside the deep freezer, what happens? Due to abrupt lowering in the temperature, the molecules which are present within water comes nearer to each other. And as a result, what happens? The intermolecular force increases and the state of liquid changes into the state of ice, which is solid. And this phenomenon of changing liquid to solid state at a particular temperature is known as freezing. Next is freezing point. Now, what is freezing point? It is the temperature at which a liquid starts changing into a solid state. And how does it occur? As I told you, for example, in case of water changing into ice, the freezing point is 0 degrees Celsius. Okay? But in case of other liquids, the freezing point may not be same. That means it differ from one substance to the other. So this is how the freezing point is stated. Next is melting. Now, what is melting? Melting is a process in which a substance in solid state changes into liquid at a particular temperature. That means when the temperature of the ice comes down, means comes above 0 degrees Celsius, that means it is 1 degree, 2 degree, 3 degree or 4 degree or above, that time ice slowly but steadily changes into water. But in case of other uh, kind of substance, it may occur, but the terminology will be same. Next, what is boiling? It is the process in which a liquid on heating changes into its vapor state at a particular temperature. That means boiling is simply changing of water into water vapor at a particular temperature. This is boiling. Next, what is boiling point? The temperature at which liquid starts changing into its vapor on heating at a given temperature and pressure is known as boiling point. For example, in case of water, at about 100 degrees Celsius, water starts changing into vapor. So the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. Next, evaporation. The process due to which a substance in liquid state starts changing into its vapor state at any temperature below the boiling point. That means when the temperature is below the boiling point, some of the water molecules which are present on the surface of water starts changing into its vapor state. It may be in case of any liquid. Now, whenever the vapor starts forming below the boiling point level, it is known as evaporation. Next, what is condensation? The process in which a substance in the vapor or gaseous state changes into liquid. That means whenever the temperature is lowered, the vapor of water starts converting into liquid again. And this phenomena is known as condensation. It may be in case of any liquid, but here I am taking the example of water for your better understanding. Therefore, the process in which a substance in vapor or gaseous state changes into a liquid state, it is called condensation. Next, let us again sum up. What is the difference between evaporation and boiling then? It's a common question because most of the people get confused over here. So let us discuss. Evaporation, it is a slow process, whereas boiling, it is a fast process. That means since boiling occurs at the temperature above the boiling point, so it's a rapid process. But evaporation, it occurs temperature below the boiling point. That is why there is a slow conversion of water, slow conversion of the molecules of a substance into its vapor state. So it's a very slow but steady process. Next is evaporation takes place from the surface of liquid, but boiling takes place from all parts of the liquid. Let me give you one example. If you take a glass of water and keep it open just on your table, study table for 3 to 4 days. What happens after 3 to 4 days? You will see that the level of water has decreased down. Now the question is, why and how the level of water has decreased down? It's a big question. Now what happens? Though the glass of water has not achieved the boiling point, but due to the higher temperature around, it stimulated the conversion of water to water vapor from the surface of the liquid. That is why the water vapor escaped into the atmosphere and the level of water in the glass reduced. And this is how, due to evaporation, the level of water in the glass reduces. Whereas in case of boiling, heat is applied from all the sides. When your mother cooks, you can observe it very minutely that it is a process of boiling which takes place from all parts of the liquid. Next, evaporation takes place at a temperature below its boiling point, whereas boiling takes place at a fixed temperature. For example, in case of water, it is 100 degrees Celsius, whereas evaporation, it takes place below a certain temperature. Next, let us have a look regarding this question. Why burning of a candle shows both physical and chemical change? When a candle is lit, the wax melts and turns into liquid. As some of the molten wax drops on the floor or table, it solidifies again. Therefore, it's a physical change. As the picture on the right hand side, you can see, students, that when a candle is lit up, it starts converting the wax of the candle, means the candle gets melt due to absorption of the heat energy, and it turns into a liquid state from the solid state. And whenever the molten wax solidifies, it again converts back into the same stage, and therefore it is known as the physical change. And we already know that physical change is something which is temporary, not permanent. That means the substance, once changed into the reactant form, can again be changed back into the reactant form. Means once it is changed into the product form, it can again be changed back into the reactant form. How? By simply reversing the condition. Like over here, when the molten wax falls on the study table or table, on coming in contact with the surface of table, which is cooler, it instantly changes into the solid state again. That means the intermolecular space decreases and the molecule comes near to each other, and instantly it changes into solid again. Whereas simultaneously most of the molten wax rises up the wick, turns into vapor and carbon dioxide. The candle becomes smaller and smaller, and this is a chemical change. So what happens over here? The molten wax rises up the wick. You can sometimes observe in your home that the vapor which is coming out of the candle, when it reaches the wick turns black due to accumulation of the carbon dioxide over here. That means a certain amount of carbon dioxide and water vapor, rather vapor, means which is mainly made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen molecule, which was present within this candle, gets lost into the environment, and this water vapor and carbon dioxide cannot be regained back by reversing the conditions over here, and therefore the candle gets becomes smaller and smaller. And since we cannot get back the original candle by reversing the condition, so it is known as a chemical change. Next we need to classify the following as physical and chemical change and explain our answer with proper reason. That glowing of a bulb, is it a physical or chemical change? Burning of sugar, whether it is a physical or chemical change. Same with heating of water and burning of wood. So let us answer. First of all, what happens in case of a glowing bulb? You simply move into a room where there is dark all around. You switch on the switches which are connected with the bulb, and after doing your necessary work, when you leave the room, again you switch off the switches and then leave the room. Now what happens in this case? In this case, again the bulb closes. Again the bulb stops glowing. Now what happens in this case? In this case, no new compounds are formed and the conditions can be reversed by reversing the conditions. If you observe properly, in case of a glowing bulb, do you find, students, any new substances formed or not? I think no. That means if no new substances are formed, then what happens? It's not a chemical change. And over here, when you simply switch off the switches, that means reverse the condition, the bulb stops glowing and the switch it on again, it starts glowing. That means here conditions can be reversed, and this is a simple physical change. Therefore, glowing of a bulb is a physical change. Okay? Next. Why burning of sugar is a chemical change? Now, burning of sugar is a chemical change because new substances called charcoal is formed. When you heat, when you burn sugar, it forms a black colored charcoal over there. And if you even reverse the condition for getting back sugar again, in this case, you will not get it back. Thus, over here, new substance charcoal is formed, the change is permanent, and we cannot get back the reactant by reversing the conditions. And thus, we see it satisfies all conditions that are associated with chemical change. Thus, burning of sugar is a chemical change. Next, heating of water is a physical change. Why it's a physical change? Because here no new substances are formed. Like when we simply heat water, what happens? Due to absorption of the heat energy, the molecules present in water moves far away from each other, and as a result, the intermolecular force decreases. And after that, it starts converting into vapor. Now, whenever water vapor is formed, we will see that the chemical composition of water and water vapor are same. Nothing is changed over here. And we can simply get back water in this process by cooling it. Now, when we will cool it, again the molecules so present in water vapor will come nearer, and therefore the intermolecular force will increase, and simply water vapor will be converted into water, and therefore it is a physical change. That means no new substance is formed over here. The conditions can be reversed over here, and there it's simply a temporary change. Therefore, heating of water is a physical change. Next, burning of wood is a chemical change. Why? Again, when wood is burned, we get wood charcoal. We will see that it has turned into ashes, and apart from this, water vapor and carbon dioxide is also liberated in the process. That means the change is permanent. That means once the ashes are formed, we are not going to get back wood again. Therefore, the condition is not reversible by simply reversing the conditions by physical means, like change in temperature or pressure. And also, the substance so formed, that is charcoal, carbon dioxide, water vapor, has a chemical property entirely different from that of wood. And therefore, burning of wood is simply a chemical change. Next, we will explain why the following are desirable changes. That is digestion, then photosynthesis, respiration, and cooking. Now, digestion. What is digestion, dear students? Digestion means simply breaking down of complex food substances into simpler form. Now, why we need to break down these complex food substances into simpler ones? So that the body cells can easily absorb it and assimilate it into its own compounds. Like it can assimilate it into genetic material like chromosome, DNA. It can help the cell to grow, to repair their body. Even sometimes excess food is stored in the form of glycogen in our body, or excess food is sometimes stored as fat layer in our body. So the main goal of digestion is to break the food by the action of enzyme. That means the complex food like carbohydrate are broken into simple sugar. Protein, they are broken simply into amino acid, the smaller units. Fat, they are simply broken into smaller units called fatty acid and glycerol. And all these components which are broken down are simply absorbed in our body. Thus, the chemical change so occurring is a desirable change, means it is very much useful for our body. Next is photosynthesis. Now, what is the meaning of photosynthesis? Photo means light and synthesis means combining. Now, by this process, green plants means they consist of chlorophyll. They simply trap the solar energy, and with the help of this solar energy, they combine simple components like carbon dioxide and water to form food, food in the form of glucose and oxygen. Now, food so prepared by plant are taken by rest of the living worlds directly or indirectly. Like herbivore eats the plant directly and gains their energy from this food, whereas carnivores consume this herbivore and indirectly consume the food so prepared by the plant. And as a result, the food so produced by photosynthesis serves as the primary food or source of energy for rest of the world. Next, oxygen. Oxygen is a gas which is produced as a byproduct of photosynthesis. Now, oxygen is required for respiration. Respiration means breaking down of the complex food into simpler substance, which we will be learning in our next slide, in order to produce energy. That means oxygen is necessary for survival along with food. Now, since photosynthesis is producing some of the important component required for our survival, therefore it is a desirable change. Next, why respiration is a desirable change? Now, respiration means after digestion, when the food is taken within the body, it is simply broken down. Broken down into what? Into glucose. Breaking down into glucose, and glucose is further broken down into energy. Now, this energy is required for performing various metabolic activities within our body, like locomotion, movement, excretion, reproduction, and so many processes which are very much in accordance with the living organism. Now, since respiration completely change this glucose into another form of energy, so the change so brought about is a desirable one because it helps in performing the various metabolic activities within our body. Next, raw materials via cooking. Cooking is also a desirable change. Now, cooking means it simply makes the vegetable or other food into palatable form so that we can consume it, like raw fish, raw meat, raw vegetable like potato and all this, we cannot consume it directly in raw form. Now, when we cannot have this in raw form, we need to cook it. And cook it means we are applying heat over here. Whenever heat is applied, the food like grains, vegetable, fish, meat becomes soft and palatable. That means our body can easily digest them and convert it into body components so that we can derive energy and necessary body components from these compounds. Now, cooking, like raw grains, cannot be eaten when they change. These raw grains cannot be eaten in the way they are. So, they need to be changed chemically on cooking, and they can be consumed after this process. That is why sometimes what happens, children who are of age 1 year or below or 2 year or below, sometimes what happens, it is preferred by mother to give them food which is highly cooked. highly cooked food like khichdi and all. What happens? The food is so much softened, so much palatable that children can easily consume that. And also, the older people who are not having teeth and having some digestion problem, they are also given food which is highly cooked. What happens due to cooking? When the chemical composition of the entire food changes, it becomes softer, it becomes very tasty, they can consume it, and after digestion, means proper digestion, it can be utilized for various purpose in our body. Like as I said, for production of energy, for growth, for repair, for replacement, and so on. So I hope students, you got a brief recapitulation of the chapter of this physical and chemical changes. Please go through the video lesson and understand, try to understand whatever is being explained over here in the form of question answer. After you go through the video lesson, whatever doubt you are having, you ask me your doubt. I will surely clarify it in my in my next Google Meet session. So thank you so much students for listening. Have a nice day.